Hey, welcome to Bipolar Disorder for Spouses, Part 2. And it's a continuation. If you haven't seen Part 1, just go ahead and stop this, go back to my number 1. And first off, I mentioned in the first DVD that, about speakers in opposite bedrooms. If you guys, decide to choose separate bedrooms, and this is one of the reasons you need to watch the first one first, because a lot of people with bipolar disorder, they need to have their own space. And, my wife, she always said, well, how about we get bunk beds? And I was like, no. But there was at least probably half the month that she would sleep at least 12 hours a day, because they don't get enough sleep. And what happens is they're trying to sleep, but they're just not getting the restful sleep that normal people can get. Like me, I'll sleep 6 or 7 hours in a night, so, and that was part of the problem. Why it worked out better for us to be sleeping separate was because, here I'd come in, she'd already be asleep and out cold, and I'm like, hey, honey, guess what? And then I go ahead and I go to sleep and boom, I'm out. 6 or 7 hours later, I wake up and I'm totally refreshed and she's still out. And at first I didn't understand that this is normal, and that, as spouses, we all need to realize that this is normal for our spouses who have bipolar disorder. Let them go ahead and sleep the 12 hours. If you're going to be planning on doing something, plan on taking them out to breakfast. Well, if they sleep till noon out, every day, then maybe breakfast isn't the idea. Plan on taking them out to lunch, or maybe taking them out to dinner, and going on like that. Sleeping is a major part of it. And I wanted to touch on that. And also, I mentioned about speakers in each other's rooms, and it really can give you the closeness. And I've talked to other people since then, and they have mentioned the speakers. It gives the person, the spouse, like you or me, you can hear your spouse breathing, even though she might be sleeping or he might be sleeping for 10 or 12 hours, every night. You'll be there, you'll be able to hear them. You know that they're safe, they're breathing, you don't have to worry about them. Okay, you don't have to go in there and open the door and check on them, because every time you open the door, you got to realize they're not getting that good of sleep in the first place, and maybe funny, they're just out cold, and you open that door, and well, guess what? You're going to add another 2 hours on their sleeping time for that day by disturbing them when they really need to have that extra time to go ahead and sleep. Okay, and I've also seen some things, here on the internet about, do you think it's right to have children and this and that, and so on and so forth? And, my answer to that is, well, heck yeah, bipolar disorder has been around. Bipolar disorder has been around forever, okay? Since day one, if you're a Christian, since Adam and Eve, all right? If you go back into the Bible and the Old Testament, 3,000-4,000 years ago, they're talking about bipolar disorder with Saul, back in 1 Samuel, and this is what he had, and this is what's going on. You look at the Bible and you get a good counseling Bible like what I've got, and this was recommended to me by a counselor, and whether you're a Christian or not doesn't matter. This is just, it's a counselor's book, and this is the Soul Care Bible, and it describes all kind of mental disorders or whatever you want to do, child abuse, it's got it all. But anyway, yeah, it's a Soul Care Bible. It's put out by the AACC, American Association of Christian Counselors, and this is the same people that put out the best CD or DVD on bipolar disorder that I ever saw, and it's Battling Bipolar Disorder by the AACC, American Association of Christian Counselors. And it was done by a psychiatrist, Dr. Michael Lyles. And, and when I first realized what was going on in my life and what was going on, when I started going to counseling to see how I could be a better husband, how I could do everything I possibly could for my wife, Mike Lyle's, CD, or actually it was a VHS tape, was what they gave me to watch, and I've seen other ones since then, and still, this one hits every single subject. So if you want to see the stuff that I'm not going to be hitting, or what I'm not going to be talking about, there's a lot of stuff here on the internet, there's a lot of stuff right here on YouTube, by doctors saying, well, what is bipolar disorder? They give you all the descriptions and blah, 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 and they start talking about the medications and all that, there's thousands of medications for it now, But, yeah, Battling Bipolar Disorder, by the American Association of Christian Counselors, great DVD, okay? And it touches on a lot of the things that I'm hitting on, but it gets into the technical stuff, okay? what I'm going by is not only what I watched in the DVDs, and, you know, a lot of the DVDs I watched was like, bam, that's exactly what's going on in my case. Bam, this is exactly what's going on. The sleeping was one of the things that Dr. Lyles was talking about, you know, and what he was saying was, yeah, they might sleep for 12 to 18 hours in a day, and I'm like, yeah, this is what I've been doing here. I thought it was something weird. I thought it was just like maybe she's trying to avoid me, but no, that wasn't the case. The fact of the matter was, she was just trying to get sleep, you know, and she'd get up all tired and stuff and just dark, dark circles around, you know, and go right back to work the next day. And there were days, like I said, when she was gone from the house for 8 hours and she would go to work and she'd come home and she'd go right straight to bed with just a hello, I'm so tired, I gotta go to bed. But the reason this is with ours is because she was unmedicated, and that was a big mistake on our part. And I'm living with the consequences. So don't make the same mistakes that we did. When you have bipolar disorder, you have to have the medication. I know a number of people that have it that don't take the medication, and like I said, well, you know, I never said this in the first one, but back in the beginning, back in 1984, we first got together, and I first got her a psychiatrist because she tried to commit suicide, which is something we went through real easily. We found out that she was trying to commit suicide because we had decided to go ahead and try and not have children, you know, and she said, well, I'll go ahead and get on birth control, right? No, that was the wrong thing to do. As soon as she started taking the pill, the next thing you know, we were at each other's throats, man. I mean, you know, yeah, no, we weren't knocked down, punching, fighting, this kind of stuff, but we were screaming at each other, and we were just totally at odds, and it was like, from one day to the next, you know, before she started taking a pill, everything was fine. We were doing fine. There was no suicidal thoughts ever. We were having this perfect marriage, the most beautiful marriage that any couple can ever have. Okay, then she started taking this pill, and I started seeing the change in her, you know, and she went from where she was just, you know, crying and stuff when she was going through, you know, her menstrual cycle for every month, to where now, you know, she was literally wanting to move out, you know. And next, you know, and a week later she'd come home just crying, you know, after I didn't see her for a week, you know, and saying that she loves me so much she didn't know what happened, and I knew where she was. She was at a friend's house, and she'd gone over there, and I told them what was going on, and they gave her a spare bedroom, you know. I just got out of the shower here, so I'm kind of wet still, but I wanted to be nice and clean and fresh for this part of the DVD. I actually went down to the river yesterday, and I was going to shoot this down at the river at my other place. But the water was so high it was going to be too lousy. I'll put a little clip in for you. And yeah, so that's what I was dealing with at the river yesterday. It was so loud that there was no way I could shoot this down there. You know, and it's just how it was. It's just crazy. So yeah, so here we were. We found out on our own that it was the pill that had changed my wife so much to where instead of being the happy, bubbly, normal person that we were used to, you know, now she was seriously thinking about suicide, and she literally did have everything prepared, and I just happened to come home at the right time that day because, you know, I'm sitting there at work and all of a sudden, phew. You know, God just says, you need to get home now. Okay, and so I went to my boss and said, look, I don't know what's going on. You know, I said, I've got this sixth sense, you know, and if you're a Christian, you know, I'm a Christian, this is how it is, and it's just normal for us, you know. And I went to my boss and said, look, I have to go home right now. There's something going on. Something bad's going to happen if I don't leave. And he says, go. You know, so I got in my Mustang. I had a little 68 Mustang back then. I got in there, and I floored it down the road to get home, and I found, you know, my wife getting ready to do herself in, and I was like, phew, what the heck is going on in my life, man? You know, so I went ahead and I called the psychiatrist right then and there in the military because she was in the Army up at Fort Richardson in Alaska, and I called up her, well, no, psychiatrist. I called her sergeant and said, look, man, this is what's going on. My wife just tried to commit suicide, and I don't know. I mean, she's not the person that I know. For some reason, she's just totally changed, you know. And to make a long story short, we found out that, you know, through our own schooling, through our own taking the time and knowing each other, that it was the pill that had changed her. And you know, the day that we figured that out, it wasn't for, you know, a long time later, because we actually had her stop taking the pill, and all of a sudden things got good again. Okay, that's when, you know, when I went and I talked to the psychiatrist and stuff, and this is when I found out that she was worst case scenario, you know, and that, you know, did it make me love her any less? No. When I found out that she had had a terrible childhood and stuff, something that was so embarrassing that she couldn't talk about it, did it make me love her less? No. When I'm sitting there and, you know, we're sitting there holding each other with the psychiatrist in front of us talking to us, and he's telling me her story, she's sitting there crying in my arms saying, I couldn't tell you, I couldn't tell you. You know, I was just too embarrassed. I could never tell anybody what happened. You know, and that made me love her that much more. You know? Sorry, I had to, you know, it's a good memory. You know, it's one of those happy memories, and I loved her so much, and I still do today. You know, even though she did run in terror, you know, because she wouldn't get the help and wouldn't stay on the medication. You know, like I went into in the first one, ladies, and this is how it was. And you know, I'll hit on that real quick. I told you in the beginning, you know, because of the age of 9/11, because you were being hurt at that time, your body was changing. Your body remembers that now in your early to mid 40s, when your body's changing again, it remembers going through so much pain, emotional and physical. And that's why a lot of people with a lot of females with bipolar disorder run from their husbands later on in life, because they put their husbands in the place of whoever it was and whatever it was that happened to them back 40 years before or 30 years before. Yeah, you know, 30 years before, when you were between the ages of 9 and 11. And it's all too common. You know, and I'm saying it's all too common because, you know, out of probably my top 10 friends, out of my top 10 friends, and this is how common bipolar disorder is, it's like 6 to 10% of the people have bipolar disorder, okay? And out of my top 10 friends, I've got 4 of us, or 5 of us actually, you know, that have a spouse or bipolar disorder. Because, I mean, it's just that there's that many people, you know. And so, yeah, you know, how many subjects have I been on so far today in the last, you know, 10 minutes that we've been on here, you know? It's like, man, talk about a whirlwind of information, man. I mean, I've got so much I want to pass on, and so yeah, if you're going to be taking medications, if you're going to start thinking about, if you're a female, starting thinking about taking the pill or whatever, just don't, okay? Whatever, I mean, whatever you do it with your doctor, with your husband, okay? And if they notice right away that something is changing, you're going to notice it with them, because the day that we figured out that it was the pill, my wife and I, we'd had our daughter, okay? She was our firstborn. And we decided to go ahead and go, she was going to go back on the pill so we could go ahead and you know, still have sex and she wouldn't get pregnant, okay? And so she started taking the pill, and boom, same thing that happened the first time. She's wanting to commit suicide. And I come home one day and we're just at each other's throats and screaming because we just couldn't agree on whatever it was. It was some stupid little thing. And for some reason it elevated me, because I grew up with my mom being bipolar. Even though I was adopted, you know, I still had the elevated levels. You know, I mean, I still could hit the highs, man. I could still hit the lows, because that's what I saw in my parents, what I saw in my mom, you know, which was really a blessing. You know, and so I came home and here she was, and, you know, we were right back in it, and I remembered what it was like, you know, 5 years before, when she was taking the pill, and I looked at her, you know, and tears just came in my eyes, and I said, oh my God, you know, and she did the same thing, and together at the same time, and together at the same time we said, it's the pill. And we hugged each other and kissed, you know, and we both apologized. And that was how we found out that the pill was what was setting her off and taking her into the super lows. Okay. Which leads us into the next subject of medication. You know, there's all kinds of medications out there, and all these medications out there nowadays, pardon me, you know, I get emotional in this sometimes, you know, because, I mean, I did lose my wife to mental illness, and it was tough. But you know what? I mean, I'm passing on the information, um, and it's just a good thing. But the medications, all they're basically supposed to do is bring you off the mania. Oh, what's the mania? Well, the mania is when you know you take off all your clothes and you're running out in public and, you know, you're crazy, you're happy, woohoo, you know, but you're just flat out spaced out. And so, but the thing is, a lot of the mania is the laughter, the fun times, the good stuff. And so what's going on is these medications are bringing you down to where they're taking you out of your most happy spot. Okay. And I mean, what you want to do is experiment with your doctor, with your psychiatrist, you know, and your husband or your wife, okay, on your medications. Because I have a friend whose son, you know, has bipolar disorder, and she went ahead and they went through all kinds of medications, trying to find a medication where he could still have his happy place. Maybe it wasn't quite there at that peak where you're just over the edge. It was right below that, you know, and this is what you got to do. You got to go ahead and take the time and go through the medications one by one and find out which one is the best. I mean, they've got, you know, Zaproxen, they got lithium, they got, you know, I can't name them all, and I don't even need to, you know, but this is the effects. A lot of them are going to have the downside effects to where it brings you down to where it's keeping you just above going into depression. And do you want to live that way? No. You want to go ahead and experiment and take the time to get the right medication to where it makes you feel, allows you to feel the highs, allows you to feel that super happiness, you know, where you can have that super love between you and your spouse, your husband, you and your wife, okay? So take the time to get the right medications. It's a big plus. And I know as I look back at it now, you know, and I remember that, you know, I didn't realize, I didn't know what bipolar disorder was back when I was 25 years old. I had no idea. Nowadays they teach you about it in school, you know. Back when I was a kid, you know, or in my early 20s, you know, the only thing I ever heard about manic depression was that old Jimi Hendrix song, you know, and that was, I didn't even know what it meant. I had no idea what it meant, you know, and you know, and I had no idea that I'd been dealing with it my entire life, you know. And so what's next? Well, next we're going to talk about spending problems. Okay, a lot of times with the people with the manic depression, and I'm going to go back to my mom, all the way back there, is she would just spend money like it was just going out of style, man. I mean, she was always buying us little trinkets and little things, you know, or, you know, she'd come home with all kinds of stuff for us. Oh, here, I bought this for you. But this is the way that she spread her love, that she showed you that she loved you. You know, it's by going out and going to Sprouce Reach or the Five and Dime or something and just buying you some small little trinket, some small little toy. Maybe it was a new yo-yo or a new top, you know, and of course shirts and clothes and stuff all the time, constantly, to where we never wanted, you know. And I look at my dad and I ask him, I was like, why do you let her do this? You know, and his, you know, response is because I love her and because this is what she needs to do. She needs to spend the money. So, you know, if you don't make enough money to support your spouse, if he or she does have this spending problem, okay, maybe you need to find a better job. Okay. And this is what I did. I mean, I had a good job. My spouse is the same way. My wife would go out and buy all kinds of things. She'd always take my kids to McDonald's, you know, always take them to pizza, always take them to Taco Bell or whatever. I mean, and it cost a lot of money, man. I mean, you know, but that was fine. You know, we had them in private school, and every day at lunch, you know, they would go for pizza or have pizza brought in, or they'd have, you know, McDonald's day and Taco Bell day and all this stuff. And it was, you know, probably $10 a day, you know, for the foods and stuff. Then she would take them out for ice cream and stuff and go to Baskin Robbins afterwards. And you know what? She did that, and that was fine. And I made more than enough money to help her do that. It's just that after a while, what was going on was I started, you know, I mean, I figured she could spend a couple $1,000s a month. That was okay. Okay. I mean, after a while, I ended up, you know, taking a less paying job because the stress was so much, at what was going on at work, that I ended up bidding down and off this crazy shift, that I was on this relief shift where I was working 2 swing shifts from 4 to midnight. Then I'd get off at midnight and be back to work at 8 o'clock in the morning with 6 hours of sleep. Then I'd get off on my second day shift, and at 4 o'clock in the afternoon from 8 to 4. And I'd have to be right back in at midnight and work midnight to 8 for graveyard for 2 days, and I actually got pulled over for drunk driving on my way home in a double back, and the police officer pulls me over and he goes, you were swerving. I go, well, yeah, I was putting on my makeup and doing my hair and talking on the cell phone and stuff, which of course is all illegal here in the state of California. And I was joking with him. He goes, when you just step out of the car, we need to do a sobriety test. And I go, dude, I'm well known in the community, okay? I have been. I'm fifth generation Placer County, California. My family came to California, before the Pilgrims landed on Plymouth Rock, back when Cortez came to California. The people from Spain, and I'm Spanish, French, and Italian, and so on, and American Indian, and Mexican, and all this now, because my family's been here for so long, came here in the 1570s, So, I'm well known in this area because we've been in California the whole time, and I'm still here, And so I'm looking at him and goes, dude, I'm going back to work. I've only got like 3 hours sleep. You think I'm swerving or something. And I go, number one, you came up on me, and you sat there on my tail running me into this truck ahead of me. What was I going to do? I didn't know you were a police officer, so I went ahead and sped up and pulled out in front of him. And that just pissed him off, because here I was wanting to do 65, which is the speed limit, and he'd come up doing about 80, and just right back to my bumper in the fast lane, just sat there. And here's a semi I'm getting closer and closer to, and I've driven his roads forever up here. And a lot of people do that. They come up next to you, they sit there, and they'll drive you in the next car. You have to hit your brakes or whatever. And I'm a offensive driver, a very offensive driver when it comes to a lot of people. They tell me, and I'll go ahead and I pull into the fast lane right ahead of them, and I'll just go ahead and slow right back down to 65. And this guy's getting on my bumper and stuff, and And then he pulls me over and says I'm weaving, and I'm like, yeah, right. I wasn't weaving. I'm on my way to work, and we end up talking, and I'm sitting there talking to him, and he's got his arms crossed, and we're laughing about it. And he goes, dude, you're driving like you're drunk, man. I said, you need to get. He goes, you need to get more sleep, and I'm like, this is my job. Look at the time of night it is. It was like 11 o'clock at night, and I go, who else is on the road? It was just me and him and some trucks. And so anyway, he didn't write me up, and we became friends, and I've known him ever since. And this is how it is with me and the people up here. I get along good. I meet him, we become friends, and next thing you know, we're seeing each other in the parade, squirting each other with water. I used to be on the fire department years ago. So yeah, here I was talking about spending and went off into one of my own little trips. But you know what? It's good to have the good times and tell the good stories and keep things going on that high level, because I don't want these DVDs to be, brought down. I want them to have, a good outpour. So what happened was, when I ended up having to cut my wife off, as far as the spending money goes, was, a couple $1,000s a month, that was okay. $1,500 a month, that was okay. But then all of a sudden she started getting back into, some of our friends from back in the old days, back when we were doing some dope, and I don't know what was going on. But, next thing you know, it was $4,000 was leaving, and $6,000 was leaving. And, I had to cut her off, and it was really one of the saddest days of my life to have to do that, because, she went from being smiles and saying, oh, honey, I spent a little bit too much money this month, and I look at the account, and, there was $6,000 gone. And it's like, yeah, I need to get it back to control, to where I went ahead and I actually figured out how much money I could be saving if I didn't give her all the money, and it was the biggest mistake I ever made. I actually went ahead and figured it up on paper, and I said, here, you can go ahead and I'll give you $750 a month. Then I'm going to go ahead and take this lesser paying job at the same place where I'll be a lot happier. And it was a lot happier. It ended up being, a good job for me, because I was able to go ahead and go to day shift and work 6 to 2, 5 days a week, get off at 2 o'clock in the afternoon in time to go pick up the kid. But she never got over not having all that extra money to spend. So if you've got the money You know, and if you have the job where you can give your wife the extra money, or your husband the extra money he needs to buy the little trinkets and stuff that make his life special or make her life special by buying the stuff for you and the kids, then just, you know, do it. And I encourage you to do it. You know, it's one of the things I'm making this for, is to pass on my mistakes. And this was one of my biggest mistakes. You know, I mean, yeah, did I need to curb the 6,000? Did I need to curb the 4,000? Yeah, I did, and I did curb it. And, you know, we did have a little argument about that because, you know, I almost had to file bankruptcy. If you're going to be a parent, if you're going to have kids, and you have bipolar disorder, of any of the, if you have any mental illness, and this is how Dr. Lyles put it, and this is what he says, that he said to all of his patients, basically, if someone put a gun to your head and told you you have to have a mental illness, and you better choose, and, you know, or I'm going to kill you, he would always say, I'm going to choose bipolar disorder because it can be cured. I can raise a family normally. I can raise a family happily and have a great family. You know what? I'm going to let it go here. I mean, if you guys are married to someone with bipolar disorder, then I don't need to tell you the stories because you're going to have them of your own. You know, all I can say is love your spouse, man. Both of you. You know, I mean, the man and the wife, you guys love each other. You both need to look at each other. And what I mean by look at each other, and let's do this. This is for all marriages. This is for all spouses. You need to pay attention. And what I'm saying is, you look right here, okay, when you're looking. Okay, you don't got to sit there and just stare eyeball to eyeball. You know, you look at the forehead a little bit. You look right here at the nose. You look to the left eye. You look to the right eye. But you sit there and you look at each other. And you give each other the concentration, and you talk to each other. You don't have to sit there and hold your head on them, and you don't have to stare at them if you feel uncomfortable. You know, it's going to change over time, you know. You give the love that you need to your spouse, whether he's a man, whether she's a woman.